I'm going to start by saying that this is going to be a little longer video, but half of it is a demonstration of brushes. So if you don't want to watch that, then you can skip this. But this is all about brushes, and we're going to talk about Amy Sillman, who I think is considered one of the greatest American painters, and she's also considered one of our greatest writers about art. I remember seeing her 20 years ago for the first time and just watching how she changes up. As we talk about mark making and brushwork, she's great to look at because she puts so many different varieties in her paintings. She'll do a wash, she'll do a very thick line, I mean a very heavy paint filled line. She moves between figurative and abstract, kind of like nobody else does. And she's just great to look at. Like this one's a super thin wash. You can pretty much see the canvas through it. And then other paintings she's described as being like elephant skin. You know, she only does about 8 paintings a year. She does not have a factory like a lot of contemporary artists does. She does all the paintings, her own paintings. She has amazing use of color. She's actually in a color reading book club, which I think sounds amazing. Yeah, and there's tons of lectures on YouTube with her because she's really considered just an amazing resource for contemporary artists. And she has a new book coming out really soon. I'm not sure. Her essays are amazing. So, again, if you just look at the marks, she probably employs every kind of possible brush you can use. And that's the main focus of this video is we're going to talk about brush strokes and the many different ways to apply paint. Like she probably has, 5 different methods on here. And she's really never restrained by that. But that's unusual. Most painters have like a go-to they kind of continually go to. We're going to look at Jennifer Packer, who had a show at the Whitney maybe last year, the year before. And I'm going to try and include studio shots. I looked for studio shots. There's her brushes, lots of really thick ones. She paints big. She does a lot of washes because she wants to kind of always get a sense of dream sense. But also she does then go back in with looks like smaller brushes and add thicker amount of paint. So that's an idea. You could do a wash and then go in. Joan Mitchell, the most amazing. Oh, I forgot her studio shot. But her brush is thick, so much paint. She probably uses a lot of shorter bristle one because they hold more paint. So if you want that look, that is something to consider. If the shorter bristles hold more paint. This is Elma Thomas. There's her painting. She probably used a lot of round brushes. Round brushes hold a lot of paint. There's a close-up of the marks. And you can kind of really dab it, and it makes these beautiful, beautiful emotive marks. So I love a good, bigger round brush is when I want to make kind of really energetic marks like this. Everybody knows who's taking class for it. I'm obsessed with Italianan, a Lebanese American painter. She must have used a lot of kind of flat brushes that allowed for a lot of paint. She probably kept her brushes in a really good shape because her edges are crisp. If you want a nice crisp edge, you can't let your brushes get all wonky, because like I do. And she probably used an angular brush because those give you really nice edges. Basquiat, I'm guessing, we have all seen probably these images of him at work, and he was basically an action painter, years after action painters. But yeah, long brushes walked on his painting, a lot of smaller, probably short-handled one also to come in and do kind of the more detailed work, but also look at those washes of color. Sure, he used big giant brushes for those and then went in with smaller brushes. Laura Owens is another contemporary who's known for just kind of doing many, many different styles and different layers. So hers is about layering. When you see him in person, she goes off the edges. She will do this kind of one painting. This one is about like beautiful gestural drawing. And if you want to do that, maybe like an angular brush or a round brush. Bryce Martin. I'm sorry there are so many images of, traditional, the white guy in their studio, but it is kind of nice to see how they paint with sticks. And his was also about layering and color relationships and shape relationships. A lot of energy would be required to make these, very nice thin paintbrush, but also a lot of dripping, kind of like Cy Twombly. Okay, Cy Twombly does anything he has to do to get his image. He'll look at him with a tiny little brush or a crayon. He'd splatter. I love this image. It just shows he was throwing the paint on the wall, dripping, tossing at it. washes, probably the giant brushes, but then this probably went with a much smaller brush, and the energy required, again, more dripping. The action painters, we're going to look at Knig and Jackson Pollock. These are all very famous. There's his wife watching him. But you know, the energy required. Look at the size of the brush. Looks like more of a calligraphy brush, which he was very inspired by. Layer after layer after layer. And those drips to kind of, you know, get successful at that without it looking messy is actually really remarkable. There's some close-ups. I want you to see how thick the paint was. And this is Knig, who's another action painter. Again, you know, long brushes, so he could kind of really get a lot of gestures in it and movement. Yeah, that's something to think too. Like, do you want a shorter brush where you have much more controlled action? Do you want a long handle? Lots of energy in those abstract expressionists. Mark Rothko, there's very few pictures of him painting because he was a very secretive painter. But what's interesting, whenever you see Rothko, it's the people right in front of it. I'm not really sure why. But he obviously would have used massive brushes because these are all washes. And then he did something called a turpentine burn at the edge because it's oil, where he would actually take a rag with turpentine and make the edges. I'm going to do a close-up here of the edge. Make it that's like a turpentine burn, which is really, you could do that with acrylic with water. Like apply the paint and then go in with a wet paper towel. Van Gogh used palette knives, so if you're interested in how he sometimes got those, palette knives are really fun to experiment with. A more contemporary painter, Robert Ryman, also used a lot of palette knives and probably some short flat brushes that held a lot of paint. And his work is just about the paint. It's just about the material. He's not trying to get you to see anything in these. He wants you to just see the paint. I remember the first time I saw this show at the Walker in Minneapolis, I was like, what is this dude doing? Mondrian, I loved his studio. His studio was so great. He would move those pieces on the walls around in his studio when he was working. And he taped, so you can tape to get these really straight edges. You can tape the work, paint, pull up the tape, let it dry, and then tape again, which is what I'm sure he did. I just added this Lenibs, which is like Vuillard and Gauguin and stuff, just to show you. Then you can use a flat brush to get these nice big sections of flat paint like they did. And so we're going to look at the brushes. So flat and wash brushes are pretty similar. One just holds more paint and one holds more water. So if you want to try big nice wash like Jennifer Packer, this is a flat brush. But if you want to look for a wash, go in the art store and look for a wash, and you can really load it up with water and paint. That's me with more water on my brush versus I added more paint here, and then that's when the same brush gives you the thick. And look how well you can blend with that. If you want to blend, add a little water. Angled brush, again, is I use all the time. It gets you beautiful marks, gestural marks like that. That's a ratty brush, so it's hard to show this, sorry. But it also then allows you to come in. I'm going to come in with this nicer angled brush and get just a really nice cut kind of into the tree. You're going to see the edge. You just get a really nice edge with an angled brush. It's one of my favorite brushes, so it's worth investing in that, I think, both because of the gesture marks and that it cuts a clean edge. So small round brushes and linear brushes. Linear brushes are more kind of nice pointillism. You can kind of dab with them. I'm sorry, that's small round. A liner brush just gets these lovely. That's a small round. Really great little lines. And pointillism and those great hatch marks. You know, like you see in a Van Gogh. That's really great. And then versus the liner brushes are longer, so they get a more elegant kind of mix. That's the small round, showing you pointillism. And so this is the first time, I think in my whole life, I've ever used a fan brush is to do this demonstration. And I'm sure you all know that this was a big Bob Ross favorite. You can make pretty little happy trees. I think he said happy trees. And so I tried. And you actually can make happy trees with your fan brush. They're solid. Palette knives, like Van Gogh and Robert Ryman, can be really fun to play with. I used to actually paint with palette knives a lot, and I still like it. It just gives you such thick opaqueness, kind of such emotive marks. It's really, really nice. And then another great type of brush is a Filbert and Bright brushes. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm blanking. One of them fills more with, again, more with water and more with paint. I'll get back to you. But what my point is, if you were interested in doing more of an abstract expressionist, these are the brushes for you because they really can load up on the surface of the paintbrush and get you a lot. So you can make a lot of marks without having to go back and put more paintbrush so you don't lose your energy. So there you can just keep making marks, without having to put more paint on, and then you don't lose kind of your momentum. And a mark will be full of paint from start to finish. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you're trying out brushes, like how much paint do I like to use. And this is a smaller round brush, and that makes just really nice marks. A motive, lots of paint, and also then at the point allows you, if you want to make nice little points like this, there you go, kind of emotive, gestural marks. And then a flat brush that's smaller, you can also do abstract expressionist type of side twombly swirls. They just really release the paint in a nice way. As you can see, some bits of the stroke are thicker, some are thinner, some of the canvas is more opaque. You can also choose to just keep reloading paint onto it over and over, and then you have really thick marks. Like my goal here was to do the layered look like we saw in Laura Owens, and so I want the pink and the black to look like they're floating over the blue, which I think doing this more paint on top, less on the bottom, really helps that. And to me, that's starting to get the feeling of an Amy Sillman or a Laura Owens, where feels like there's different stages of this. Yeah, so this is my bad abstract expressionist painting for you, and I cannot wait to see you all tomorrow. Have a good night.